So thanks so much for agreeing to do this again. I really enjoyed the last one, and our readers did as well. So for this one, we'll be publishing it in the Mandarin report in December.
Okay.
So we'll be sharing it on social media in China, and hopefully, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Okay, fine, great.
Cool. All right, so what a year, right? 2020.
Well, I suspect if we look back over history, we'd say that about most years. That's one of the things about life. Anyway, yeah, it's been quite a year, and it's not over yet.
Yeah.
November's not even over yet. November's turning out to be very interesting.
Yeah. The elections, I thought when I was preparing for the interview that I'd be able to talk to you about the winner, but I guess it's not 100% decided. Everybody seems to be really transfixed on who's going to be elected and what's next for the US. Did you have any thoughts on that, or?
Well, I hope somebody's going to win. Maybe we're going to have a coup for the first time in U.S., well, the second time in U.S. history. We might have a coup. Mr. Trump might pull this off somehow. To me, it's pretty astonishing what he keeps saying and what he keeps doing. But, you know, he's got a lot of people who love him. And if he says it enough, they believe it. I mean, Mr. Goebbels, you may remember Mr. Goebbels back in Germany 80 years ago. He said, and he was very good at it, he was a terrible guy, but he said many times, if you say something enough times, everybody believes it.
Yeah.
And he and Hitler said it over and over and over again, and people believed him, even though they were liars and fools and terrible people. So it's been proven many times in history. All you got to do is say it, and people believe it.
Yeah, and yeah, so let's see what happens. I mean, it's all still up in the air, but yeah, let's see. Plenty of people are talking about modern monetary theory and universal basic income. I think it was one of the, or at least a theme that was going around during the election season. Is that you think that's definitely going to happen, or? Well,
Jason, throughout history, whenever there's a theory that's lying around and hard times come, many people say, hey, that's a good idea. Let's try that. Yeah. Things are bad. Let's try it. And right now we have MMT, more money today, and everybody wants more money today. It sounds wonderful. It sounds easy. But I would remind you, Jason, apropos of our previous conversation, Mr. Marx had a great theory. It sounded wonderful. And for a long time, people tried it. Nobody wants to be a Marxist anymore. We now know it doesn't work. But that doesn't mean people didn't try it, because it sounded good for a long time. So as things get worse, more money today, we'll probably get more people who want to try it. The British already are doing it. They don't say it officially that they're doing it. But in practice, they're doing the same thing. So I'm afraid, or who cares what I'm afraid of, I suspect we're probably going to have more people signing up for more money today, because it sounds easy and it's good, and it might well work for a while. Remember, Jason, the history's full of theories that didn't work in the end, but worked for a while, and that people loved. But if more money today becomes the practice, things are going to look better for a while, but then eventually you better own your gold and silver, because, you know, it's very clear that if you print too much money, the value of the money goes down.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what a lot of the people that read the report are thinking, right? Like that gold and silver would give them some, like act as a safe haven of sorts from these theories, right? It has in the past, and we discussed that last time. Have you bought more gold and silver lately, like since a year and a half ago, or what are your views on the?
Well, a year and a half ago, when we first contacted each other, I was still waiting pessimistic about the price of gold. As you may remember, I started buying gold in the summer of 2019, as I was pretty clear about to many people, and I have been buying gold since. Not buying it at the moment, waiting for it to go down. Right now, a lot of people are being forced to sell their gold to eat. India's the largest gold market in the world, and a lot of Indians have to sell their gold. So, but somewhere along the line, I'm going to buy more gold and more silver. I mean, I'm sure I'll get the timing wrong. I always do, but I will certainly buy more gold and more silver. I probably will buy more silver now, Jason, just because silver's cheaper on a historic basis, but I'll buy more of both. I got both, I'll buy more of both.
Okay. I wish now we were having this interview face to face. I could look a little bit more on your collection.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I've never sold any gold in my life. I've given some away, but I've never sold any. And I hope that my children have my gold someday. Okay. Having said that, Jason, I do just want to quickly say, gold is going to go up. Gold is going to get overpriced in the next turmoil as we go along here, certainly in the next few years. And that's fine. That's great. What I'm afraid of is, no, not afraid, but what may happen is that gold turns into a bubble. Now, if it becomes a bubble, I'll have to sell, because you always have to sell a bubble, because when bubbles pop, it's disaster for a long, long, long time. So I hope gold doesn't turn into a bubble, because I don't want to sell. I want my children to have my gold someday. But other than that, I plan for all of my gold and silver to go to my children someday.
You'll give us a call when you think it's in a bubble, right?
No, I don't have to give you a call. I'll just have to listen to you.
I wish.
For goodness sakes. You guys know more about gold than I do, that's for sure. Everybody knows more about everything than I do.
Yeah. Would you say 2008 was what happened between 2008 to 2011 when the precious metals had a big run up? Would you say that was a bubble, or that was just something that was maybe got a bit frothy, but it had a healthy pullback?
I wouldn't call that a bubble. $1,900 an ounce is hardly a bubble. It was expensive and it ran up a lot, but that's not a definition of a bubble in my view. A bubble, Jason, is when it's going up every day by big numbers and everybody's buying it and all people are talking about is gold. Yeah, there was some of that back in 2011, September, but no, that was not a bubble. I've seen many bubbles and read about many bubbles in my life all over the world. And that was a period of exuberance, overpriced, but that was not a bubble.
Okay. Well, good.
If there's a bubble, I will call in Gold We Trust and tell you, but I won't need to. You will know too. You will be telling me. Okay.
So when I get in a taxi and the guy is telling me you can't own anything else, you can only own gold because it only ever goes up, then alarm bells should start to ring, right?
Especially if he asks you to pay him in gold.
Okay, yeah.
Your taxi fare. If he says, I don't want money, I want gold, you should be very careful.
I won't be able to get off the taxi then, I think. How about the fiscal situation? Like in the US and in most of the developed world, we touched on this last time, but it seems like it just keeps getting deeper into unbelievable territory, right? Do you think even while the debt's going up, yields are staying low, what do you think's you think that's gonna change, or they're gonna be able to somehow keep it low as the debt keeps growing up?
Keep interest rates low?
Yeah.
Well, they can certainly print and buy bonds. They have more money than I do. The Bank of Japan, the Bank of America, the Federal Reserve in the U.S. have more money than I do. So certainly they can keep interest rates low for a while. And if we turn into MMT, more money today, of course, that will keep interest rates low for a while, help them keep interest rates low for a while. But Jason, if something's too good to be true, it's not true. Eventually, the truth comes out. So, but yes, we may see low interest rates for longer, but the debt keeps going higher and higher and higher. And nobody has repealed the laws of supply and demand yet. They cannot. And if you print gigantic amounts of debt, or if you raise gigantic amounts of debt, interest rates eventually will go higher. First of all, because there's too much supply, and second of all, some people start to say, wait a minute, how are they going to pay this off? You know, some people will question the credit.
Yeah. Doing something interesting happened though, like in March when everything was crashing, it seemed like for a while there, for a few days, the treasury market was also like the yields on treasuries started to go up as well. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that something showing that maybe when things get really chaotic that treasuries aren't as safe as we think they are? Or
well, that's my point. There will come a time when there's just too many treasuries, and people will be worried about, oh my gosh, how are they going to pay this off? And or there's so many treasuries, it just overwhelms the market. You know, if they just keep pouring treasuries into the market, but it's not just treasuries, Jason. The Japanese, the English, everybody's doing it. So there's huge numbers of debts coming from bonds coming and debts coming from everywhere. So it's not just the U.S. Treasury.
Okay. Yeah, in the last interview, we mentioned that savers were going to have a hard time of it. You think that's going to be the continuing theme going forward? Like we were just mentioning that, you know, for an average mom and pop, you know, that's maybe in their 50s, 60s, they're looking to put their savings somewhere safe. You were saying that, oh, it's getting tougher and tougher to find somewhere safe, right? At the moment, is that still your view, and do you think that will change in the near future, or is it going to be tough for a period of time?
Well, Jason, I never use the word safe in the investment world. You know, maybe I said that last time, but I'm sort of surprised because I know that nothing is safe.
You did say that there's nowhere safe, that there's nowhere safe. Yeah.
Good. I was going to say, gosh, have I lost my mind? First of all, you need to understand nothing is safe. Yes, and sometimes some things are less unsafe than other things, but there's no such thing in the investment world as safe. History will come along and prove it to you over and over again. So now, yes, at the moment, certainly, bonds are clearly in a bubble. I mean, interest rates have never been this low in the history of the world, ever. It doesn't mean bonds can't go higher. It just means we're certainly in a bubble in the bond market. Stocks, the U.S. stock market is at an all-time high. Doesn't mean it's a bubble. In fact, it's not some parts of the U.S. market may be in a bubble, but the whole market is not. So as I look around the world, the only asset class, I don't see any currencies in a bubble. They only have, and commodities are the cheapest asset class all over the world. I mean, commodities are down a whole lot. So as I look at the world, commodities are the cheapest, and maybe that is a less unsafe haven. Maybe silver, you know, silver's down 60% from its all-time high, Jason. Well, that's not overpriced. That's not a bubble. Something that's down 60% from its all-time high is clearly not a bubble. But safe, I don't know anything safe.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Then as we're now in 2020 and everything's going digital, you know, we're not even, a lot of us, we don't even go into work anymore. We're looking at a screen, talking to each other, just like we are now. And then we look at the share markets and we see these big names like Apple, you know, Google, everything just keeps screaming higher and higher and higher. For us, when we're talking to people, and then we it's almost like, how can you still mention something like gold and silver and commodities, you know? How it's still so far away for the guys are just looking at their screen, looking at what the price of Apple is today, you know. When will that day of reckoning come, and how will this sentiment get calibrated somehow so that people realize, actually, I do need commodities. I mean, my computer's made from aluminum, silver, copper, lithium. Like, when does that shift happen, or is there a catalyst for that shift to happen with your experience? Maybe you could guide us.
Well, Jason, I will tell you that throughout history, thing goes on forever. Bear markets don't go on forever, and bull markets don't go on forever, no matter what country, what asset class, etc. So will Apple someday go down? Yes, believe it or not. Will Google someday go into a bear market and maybe even disappear? Yes, I hate to tell you. You've heard of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is probably one of, if not the most famous stock average in the world. It was started 125 years ago, more or less. Nothing. And when the Dow Jones Industrial Average was founded, it had the most astonishing blue chips in America. Everything was the bluest of the blue chip. None of those companies are still in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. None of them. None of them. Even though at the time it was very carefully selected for the best of the best. So don't worry, nothing is going to go on forever. And yes, right now, I'm sure if we said to a 26-year-old, you won't believe this, but Apple's going to disappear someday, he would say, oh my God, you're such an old fool. You know, you guys, you're so old, you don't know anything about anything. And I would say, yeah, you're right. Jason, in a bull market like this, you need a 26-year-old. 26-year-olds think this is wonderful. They think this is normal. They think that they're so smart, they're making money. So when there's a bubble, you need a 26-year-old, because this old guy will say, wait a minute, this is crazy. The 26-year-olds will make money and the old guys won't. When it ends, though, you don't want the 26-year-old anymore. The 26-year-old will have no idea what's happening. The 26-year-old will lose everything because he doesn't know why he made it in the first place. So yeah, it's going to end someday. Don't worry. I don't know when. I have no idea. You should watch In Gold We Trust.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not 26 years old anymore then.
Well, I mean, Jason, as I said, it's great to be 26-year-old in a time like this if you're in the right market.
Yeah.
But in many parts of the world, the 26-year-olds are pouring into the market. You know, every day she'll turn on her computer and start buying. She don't know what she's buying, but she owns it.
Okay. And yeah, so I was touching on sentiment earlier, like wondering when sentiment shift towards the commodities, right? And I see that there are some well-followed names, you know, like the Sam Zell, Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones, for example, who have said, oh, they're starting to take a bigger interest in gold. Do you think that that's something that will maybe bring more interest to gold, and then more broadly speaking to the rest of the commodities?
Well, of course, Chase, but remember, gold was at an all-time high recently. It's not as though people are ignoring gold. It's not as though people are in despair and shorting gold or something. Gold recently was an all-time high. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm delighted that Sam has finally bought gold, you know, but many people, before this is over, gold will become very overpriced, go up a lot. I told you, I hope it doesn't turn into a bubble. Yeah. But it has the potential to be a bubble eventually, as does silver. At the moment, silver is certainly cheaper on a historic basis. But yeah, if Sam Zell or Paul Jones says, oh gosh, I'm buying gold, some people will listen.
Okay. And any thoughts on Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of people, Paul Tudor Jones, you mentioned him, has been playing with investing in and making money in Bitcoin. A lot of people have in cryptocurrencies. A lot of cryptocurrencies have disappeared already, Jason, as you well know. So one must be careful. If and by the way, money is going to be on the computer, on the internet. There's no question about that. It already is in China. If you go to China, you can't take a taxi with money. You can't buy ice cream with money. It's all got to be on your phone if you want to do anything. And so therefore ahead of most of us, but every country in the world, or nearly every country, is working on computer money, crypto money, call it what you will, and eventually everything's gonna be on the computer, and governments love it because first of all, it gives them more control, but second, they don't have to print it, they don't have to transport it, they don't have to secure it, they don't have to, account for it. It's very easy. They love computer money. I hate it because someday they're gonna call up and say, Jason, you've been drinking too much coffee this month. They'll know everything you do, which I don't particularly like. So there's going to be computer money. Will it be Bitcoin or things like that? In my view, no, because governments don't want to lose their monopoly. And if Bitcoin becomes that successful, they'll outlaw it. Yeah. Now, the crypto guys say, listen, we're smarter than the government. And they are. Oh, Jason, they're much smarter than the government. But the government has the guns. And if the government comes in and says it's illegal to use this stuff as money anymore, most of us will stop using it. Yeah. If it gets that far. I mean, I doubt that it's going to get that far, that it becomes a successful medium of exchange or certainly as money. But who knows? But if it does, governments are not going to say you can use Bitcoin instead of our money. No, governments are never going to say that.
I mean, in the last few months, plenty of different central banks have been talking about creating like a central bank digital currencies, right? So that might be their way of trying to get around the competition issue and to say, hey, don't use Bitcoin, use ours. It's just as convenient.
That's what they've always done. Yeah. Is that good for the world? No. Will it happen? Yes. Governments always do that.
Yeah, they're late to the party, but like you said, because they hold the guns and they make the rules, they can bully the first movers, I guess, right? And jockey for position.
Well, they always have. I don't like it, as I say, but they have the guns. I mean, in periods of pure chaos, at times, maybe they're not in control, but in terms of if we have pure chaos, Jason, electronic money is not going to be very useful because, first of all, electricity may go down in many places, and second of all, the internet probably will go down in many places for a while. So in chaos, I don't see crypto money being very useful if it gets to that.
So yeah, you mentioned China just now, saying that you can't buy ice cream or pay for a taxi without using these, digital money. The last time I was in China, I got so shocked because I wanted to pay my credit card at a restaurant, and it was 8 p.m. at night, and the guy was rolling his eyes, saying that because of you now, I need to get this whole machine set up because nobody pays with this backwards piece of plastic anymore, right? And so that struck me as very, very, it's like you're going into a parallel world sometimes, right, when you travel to China. And now, with not being able to travel there since January, I'm in Singapore. You're in Singapore as well, right, at the moment?
Yes, I'm in Singapore.
Yeah. So as you see the way the COVID situation is being handled globally, like something struck me as being very curious, like how is it that these East Asian countries are able to do a relatively better job of dealing with these with the pandemic, for example? Like I call my friends now in China and they're saying, nobody wears masks anymore, like we're just walking around as if nothing's going on. It's all back to 2019, sorry. Any thoughts on how that's the case? Like it's quite makes me feel a bit uneasy to see such a difference in the way it's getting handled.
Well, yeah, if you turn and look on the internet, you see people in the shops in China, the restaurants, the bars, everybody's having a fine old time. That's not the case in other countries, as you know. I presume that it's true what China says, whether the governments lie. All governments lie all the time, including the U.S., especially the U.S. But the facts are, as you just pointed out, people are out and about. So even if the government's lying, everybody is having quite a good time in many Asian countries. And I don't know why Asia has done a less bad job than the rest of the world. I do know that, in my view, the countries which have closed down have made a mistake. You know, we've had many epidemics in history, Jason. Never before did they close McDonald's. Never before did they close airlines or shipping. Seems to me that this time some media and maybe politicians panicked and started closing everything down, so everybody did it. But we've had many epidemics without the world ending, and sometimes the cure can be worse than the disease.
Yes.
The cure can be worse than the disease, and Sweden never closed down. Yeah. China closed shortly in some periods. The countries that didn't panic seem to have done less bad job than others. But we'll know in 3 or 4 years. We'll know who was right in 3 or 4 years. I would not have closed, but who cares what I say? 3 or 4 years, we'll know who was right.
And you still happy to be in Singapore?
What?
Are you still happy to be in Singapore?
Oh, yeah. No, we're pleased in Singapore. Singapore closed down. Singapore was doing a great job before. Then they closed down and things started going bad. You know, just to sort of proves my point. No, we're happy in Singapore. My kids like it here. My wife, we all like it here.
Okay, and yeah, we mentioned last time, right, that Asia was a place to be going into the next decade. Still, nothing's changed there. You're still thinking, if a young person was to listen to this interview somewhere on the other side of the world, that they should still be excited about Asia's prospects going forward?
Well, people should. It's a huge move to move anywhere, much less to a different country or a different part of the world. But yes, for me, Asia is still the future. There will be problems in Asia. Everybody that rises, whether it's an individual or a company or a family or a country, has problems along the way. But I look around the world. I mean, I'm an American, but I have to acknowledge that the U.S. is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and it's getting worse every day. Yeah. Great Britain is just doing absurd things, and I love Britain, but I have to face facts. Asia will have problems, but Jason, as I see the world, Asia's the place to be.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Jim, the last time we spoke, it's going to make you sound like a prophet, because you said going forward, it's all going to be just about survival. I don't know. Do you still remember saying that?
I know I said that. Yes. Sometimes I get it right, Jason.
So, is that still the case now? Like, going forward, it's about survival. How can someone thrive currently instead of just surviving? How can they look to thrive? Because from my perspective, talking to my friends and family, things, even in Singapore, where people think it's going relatively well, people are still struggling, right, with the current situation. It's harder in the jobs market. Makes you feel maybe a little claustrophobic. What's any good news to share with everyone, to say things will get better, and maybe how they could put their focus into the future?
Well, Jason, everybody should become knowledgeable about what's happening in the world. You know, watch In Gold We Trust. Do whatever you have to become knowledgeable about what's happening in the world, because there are going to be some very complicated and bad times in the future. The more knowledge you have, the more worried you will be. And the more worried you will be, the more prepared you will be. You know, in the 30s, there was a horrible depression, but many people came out of the 1930s very rich and very successful. Whenever there's a tragedy, some people do well. The Chinese have a word, wei ji. We don't have the word in English, but wei ji means, you know, the Asians have been around a lot longer. Wei ji means opportunity and disaster are the same thing. By the way, that word exists in Korean, it exists in Japanese. They pronounce it differently, but the character is exactly the same. It's the same character, meaning that opportunity and disaster are the same thing. So yes, if you're prepared, Jason, you'll probably come out of things okay. But many of us are going to have very serious problems. I hope I survive. I hope you survive. I hope everybody who watches In Gold We Trust survives. But don't think it's going to be a bed of roses for the next decade. It's not. Look at all the debt that's being built up around the world. Jason, in 2008, we had a big problem because of too much debt. Since 2008, Jason, the debt has skyrocketed everywhere. Even China. China didn't have much debt 20 years ago. Even China has a lot of debt now. So be prepared, be worried, and you'll be okay. But still, survival is going to be a very high priority for the next decade or two. I'll go back just one more time. America's built up staggering debt. I have 2 young daughters. They're Americans. Oh, my God. 5 years, 10 years, somebody in America is going to say, wait a minute, where did all this debt come from? How are we going to pay this debt? You know, my daughters are going to be young women, but then it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it was interesting that throughout the whole election season, no one was talking about the debt. It was like a big elephant in the room, right? Like it's not on the radar of the average person, or are they just so used to debt that they think it's?
But Jason, they want to have good times. They want you to vote for them because everything is okay. You know, there was a study done in America not long ago that showed that the successful politicians are the people who were good at playground during school. You know, every day at school, there's a period when you have playground, when you have recess. The kids who are best at playground become the politicians. So they don't know what they're doing. They just want you to feel good, so you'll vote for them. Unfortunately, you and I got to worry about survival.
And in that sense, it doesn't really matter who wins, right? The debt's still going to be there.
Well, the debt's going to be there. It's going to get worse. And it is getting worse every day. And please, I hope you're worried.
I am. All right. Last question. It seems like since we spoke last, the world's, in my view anyway, it seems like it's getting a little bit more deglobalized. It seems like it's breaking a little bit more into blocks, like Europe's on one side, America's on the other side, you know, the US, of course. Do you think we're going back to this really intertwined global economy of 2019, or will it look different going forward as people start to maybe jostle for trading rights or, you know, advantages?
Jason, throughout history, we've had long periods when the world is opening up, being more global, if you will. We've also had long periods when the world has been closing off and becoming less global. The opening periods have always been more prosperous and better for people. It doesn't mean we don't have the bad times. And the closing off, as I look at the world, I see many people closing off. It's not good. I don't like it, but I happen to know it's always happened and it always will. I can stand here and say, don't do it, don't do it. But when people are in that mood, especially when economic bad times come, they do it more and more. Politicians, when things go bad, always love to blame the foreigners. Foreigners have different language, different skin, different food, different everything. It's very easy to blame the foreigners, and people have for centuries, because that's the easy way. And that's when people close off more and more. One of the problems of history is, Jason, very few people learn the lessons of history. In fact, the main lesson of history is people don't learn the lessons of history.
Yeah,
if they did learn the lessons of history, we'd all be better off. But in Washington right now, they don't know the lessons of history, and if they do, they think they're smarter than history. Yeah. Mr. Trump will tell you, I am smarter than history. Don't worry. Listen to me. Well, my reading of history is different, that history is smarter than most of us, and that history shows that when we close off, it's bad, but that it always happens because many people don't care, and they say, evil foreigners, get rid of them. And it's happened throughout history. Some great, great countries in history have closed off and gone into decline.
Okay. Then, Jim, before we close the interview, any last words you want to share with parting words for our readers or listeners?
Well, I just will say again that become knowledgeable. Mm-hmm. And if you become knowledgeable, you'll get word, and if you get word, you'll be prepared, because there have been many bad periods in our lives, and there'll be many bad periods coming, as history shows. Be ready, and if you're ready and prepared, you'll come out okay, and you may come out on top. Just don't sit there blasé and ignoring what's happening in the world.
Okay, understood. Jim, thanks so much. It was fun as usual. Hopefully we can do it again next year.
My pleasure, Jason. I hope we can do it again. I hope there is a next year. I hope that things don't get so bad that there's no next year.
Well, if there's no internet, maybe I'll take a long walk over to your place and maybe...
Well, if there's no internet, then you'll have to come. Yeah, we can do it then. I hope we can figure out a way to record it if there's no internet. All right. Thank you, Jason.
All the best.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.